Hi, welcome back to my channel. So welcome again to Recent Reads. I have 3 books to talk about in this video. However, I already have 2 individual videos for 2 of the books that I'm going to mention in this video. I will still mention those books because I intend to talk about these books in chronological order, but I'm not going to talk about these 2 books in great detail in this video. So if you are interested in checking out my thoughts about those books, feel free to check out the links down below in the description. And I think this time the recent reads is a little bit special. Well, it's not special, you know, kind of special. But yeah, all of the 3 books that I'm going to talk about in this video are translated fiction from different countries. So yay! I really like translated fiction. You know, they have a lot of like layers to explore. You know, you have that, you know, the base, which is the writer's part, you know, the original writer's part, and then you also have that layer on top, which comes from the translator. So I always find that aspect really interesting, because sometimes, you know, you can be like, oh my gosh, the translation is so good, it serves the story really well, and on other occasions, like, the translation is so bad. And you can critique the translation. You can pretty much just kind of like talk about how the translation really cripples the story, and, you know, stuff like that. It's really interesting with, you know, translated works. So anyway, talking about these books in chronological order in which I finished these books. So the first one was Notes of a Crocodile by Qiu Miaojin, translated from Chinese to English by Huie. So Qiu Miaojin was a Taiwanese writer, and Notes of a Crocodile is a novel that is set in Taiwan around late 80s, and I think it goes all the way until early 90s in the novel. So it is set in a post-martial law Taiwan, and it centers around this young woman nicknamed La Zi, who is college aged. So basically she goes to college, and this novel is sort of about her life at that particular time, in which she's trying to navigate her personal identity as a lesbian woman, and at the same time how she navigates her romantic relationships, friendships, and to a lesser extent how she navigates school. So the main thing about this book is basically about La Zi trying to figure out the feelings that she has for herself as a lesbian woman. She's dealing with a lot of self-loathing. She's dealing, you know, a lot of self-hatred in this book. A lot of discomfort with who she is as a person, and as a result she is suffering from a myriad of mental health afflictions as well, because of that, because of her struggle in accepting who she is as a lesbian woman. And all of these things would naturally spill over onto her relationships with other people, with her romantic partners, with her friends, and this is pretty much the core of this book. It is about someone's attempt to sort of reconcile their life with their social milieu, which is kind of homophobic, and, you know, how those things clash with each other and how they sort of breed. There's really a lot of negative things inside the person, which would eventually affect the mental health. I find this book written in a very interesting voice, which I think really fits with the story. It has a lot of, you know, angst of youth. It has a lot of this kind of like, you know, like how young people I'm young too. You know, like how young people like to sort of philosophize about things, philosophize about life, or relationships, about love and stuff like that. And it is done in a way that is hit or miss, which is pretty much natural for young people. So it really captures that kind of innocence and also the loss of innocence. It really captures that the juvenile vibe. It captures that naivete, which serves the story really well, because another way of saying this book is that it can be construed as a coming-of-age story as well. And the humor is definitely there, and the humor usually feels more like makes it more like a dark comedy kind of a book. Although I wouldn't call this book a dark comedy. It's a heartfelt book written in a language that is not necessarily mature in a very reflective way, but it is definitely there. There are insights to be gained from there, and I really like how it feels very passionate and honest, and it makes you kind of wonder whether or not parts of this book is confessional, on the author's part. That part is really fascinating to explore. So I give this on 5 out of 5 stars. Really wonderful. Anyway, the next book, I already have a video on Notes of a Crocodile if you want to check that out. The next book I don't have a video for, and that would be Breathing into Marble by Sintija Černiauskaitė. And this one was translated from Lithuanian into English by Marija Marcinkute. So this book was published sometime in early 2000s. I think it was 2006. And this book is about a middle-class Lithuanian couple who adopts a boy from an orphanage. So the couple is Isabel and Liudas. So Isabel would be the novel's protagonist, and in the beginning we see how this couple is trying to adopt a boy named Ilya from an orphanage. But from the get-go we have this, when we are introduced to Ilya, we have this sense that Ilya is not like other boys, in the sense that he is kind of strange. He doesn't really work well with others. He doesn't really communicate. He has that kind of creepy vibe attached to him, and so that sort of makes this book starts, at least at the beginning, it makes the book feel like a thriller, as if something ominous is going to happen to this family once they adopt Ilya, as their son. Now, another thing about this couple is that they already have their own biological son, but this biological son has a health issue, and it is sort of implied that the health issue of their biological son might mean that this son may not make it into adulthood. Now, this is not outright mentioned, but there are certainly bits and parts here and there in this book that sort of implies that, and that part is going to be kind of important. That implication is going to be sort of important into this book once we get further into the plot, which would eventually evolve into, from a suspenseful thriller kind of a novel, it would eventually evolve into some kind of a reflective, literary, psychological fiction that involves, that centers on Isabel as a person, as a character. So yeah, back to the adoption. Once the couple adopted this creepy boy, I feel so bad in saying that. Once this couple adopts Ilya, bad things happen in their family. You know, I don't want to give out too much spoilers, but you know, unsavory things happen to this family, and it would eventually lead to an event that would cause Isabel going into this kind of like a rock bottom situation, and she starts to evaluate herself and her life, her past and her present, and we would eventually get some revelation as to what happened to Isabel in the past and what is going on with Isabel at the present, and all of these things would sort of tie together into a into a reflective kind of a novel. I like that aspect of this book. I like that this book is trying to go deep, especially into the character of Isabel, you know, trying to make us understand more of her as a character, even though this book starts off as a thriller, and I expected it to be some kind of a thriller with, you know, some stabby stuff, because it does have that ominous vibe to it. It does change into this kind of a deeper, more meaningful kind of a work. What I didn't particularly like, however, is that it feels like this book is also divided into two parts, and that will be the thriller part and also the psychological fiction part. I don't feel that they mesh well together. In the thriller part, we are introduced to this character, this orphan boy named Ilya. Personally, you know, and I think this is related to my own expectation on a novel as well. Personally, I feel that if a character is introduced, and if you want to make a book that goes deep into characters, right? Making another character, a peripheral character, but somewhat important character like Ilya, more like a device, is not exactly, you know, jiving well with me, because somewhere in the middle of this book, Ilya just sort of gets shoved away from the center of the novel, and he ends up sort of becoming some kind of a device, despite the fact that we have been introduced to him at the beginning of this book. We have been given necessary reason to feel intrigued by him, to be curious about him, but somehow his character would eventually be sort of quasi-discarded, and I just didn't really enjoy that so much. The shift of the tone of this book, despite me finding it fascinating, I also don't find it very organic. I don't find it very natural. It's like there is a clear delineation between these two parts, and it just feels sort of jarring. So it doesn't really work as smoothly as it could have been. And as a result, this book just didn't really like making me feel satisfied, especially when it comes to the ending, where the character Isabel eventually gets her kind of share of character development, and you know, the kind of I would say denouement, resolution that readers can get from that. I just didn't feel satisfied with the resolution. I just felt like it was a little bit rushed, and it just didn't quite hit it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this novel, but I would still recommend you guys recommend you guys to try this novel. This is my first novel from Lithuania, so I'm really quite excited, and it was after this novel that I checked out other novels from the region as well: Lithuania, Latvia, the Baltic, and I think it includes the Estonia as well. So I do have some of the books from the region that I will be reading in the future, so I'm quite excited about that. Anyway, moving on to the third book, and that would be, I just talked about this book Vengeance is Mine, All Others Pay Cash by Eka Kurniawan. I have a video for this book. So this book was originally written in Indonesian. It was translated into English by Annie Tucker. This book is about a teenage boy who lives in a Indonesian village, and one day after witnessing a particularly traumatizing incident, he finds himself having difficulty in getting an erection. And because of this, he starts to experience low self-esteem. He is scared that other people would find out that he has trouble getting an erection, because that would mean, especially in the context, in the place where he lived, that would mean that he is not man enough, which is something that is highly valued by the male members of the society at that particular, in this particular setting. And to make matters worse, he falls in love with a girl. But knowing that he can't get an erection, he's worried that this girl will find out about it, and therefore he becomes really insecure about this aspect of him, and he's trying to work on ways how to sort of heal himself from this particular affliction. So the premise itself is already quite ridiculous. It is really, to me, it is funny. It is like really outlandish way. This is the kind of plot line that I look for. And after reading this book, I am really impressed by it. I've already read other books by Eka Kurniawan, and I really like his writing style. I really like his deadpan delivery of humor. I really like how he also includes commentaries, so much commentaries on social issues such as discrimination against women, treatment of men in regards to expectations on masculinity, gender roles, gender dynamics, history, violence and brutality in society. He includes a lot of this into his work, and I think this is another one that was a success to me as well. I really enjoyed this book, and I highly recommend you guys checking this out. Although this book can be quite difficult to read because the writing tend to be quite graphic, especially with when you consider the setting of this book, which is painted as a place that is somewhat Wild West-esque, a lot of like lawlessness going around, people fighting each other all the time, and the other characters just sort of treats it as something normal. And so you can expect to see some really graphic sexual violence, some really graphic brutality in this book. So just a heads up if you are interested in checking out his books. Anyway, those are all of the books that I want to talk about in this wrap up. I'll see you again in another video. So until then, take care. Thanks for watching, and bye bye.